Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Heal Profoundly and Enduringly. I'm so excited to have you back here today. If you have not been on this show before, this is the space where I want you to get out your pen and paper and allow yourself to have an open heart and receive resources and tools and love and connection that allow you to empower yourself to heal yourself. So today I have a very special guest, Christopher Linkenbach, and I can't wait to introduce him to you. I've been waiting months to meet with this man, so I'm excited to introduce him. He is the COO of Comfort Zone Retreats, a retreat company focused on retreating from the world and incorporating mental wellness techniques such as breathwork and meditation in order to truly disconnect from the anxieties of our daily lives. Christopher is also a life coach, meditation fanatic, and is studying to become a licensed psychotherapist at Pacifica Graduate Institute. He currently resides in Austin, Texas, where he's coaching soccer, leading retreats, and training to become licensed in psychodrama. And today he's going to talk to us about learning to be human. So welcome, Christopher. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Laura. It's an honor to be here.
You're welcome. And friends, like we got started today and he's like, let's take some breaths and set intentions. And I'm like, man, see, this is why I love you, dude. This is why I needed you on this show. He was helping me get centered when I opened this morning. It was beautiful and such a gift. So thank you for letting me receive that.
Absolutely.
All right. So I always start this off by asking one question, which is, what is that one thing that you feel is necessary to heal profoundly and enduringly?
Yeah. I think that ultimately the word that comes to mind instantly is courage. And the reason that I say courage is because it requires courage to actually go in. And when we talk about what is healing, you can talk about healing in a bunch of different contexts, but the way in which I'm going to discuss healing today is emotional healing. And healing from our emotions does involve courage because we have to actually be able to go in and feel our emotions. And the only way to heal our emotions is to feel them. And through that process, we allow ourselves to tap into process and then to let go of anything that we may be holding on to. And so it takes courage to take a step back, to recognize that everything that is happening in the external world may not be what we're looking for. And where I think that's the whole paradox of this universe is that there's this overwhelming sense of something inside of us that is constantly getting us to look to the external world. Like there's almost this need to be filled in some way. And it's constantly looking to the external world. And we fill it up in fleeting moments through validation seeking. We fill it up in fleeting moments through maybe the use of drugs or food or through the use of perhaps even sex to try and fill this hole inside of us. And we're constantly looking to the outside world to fill us up through money, through working out, through working all the time, whatever it may be. And it never feels like it's quite enough. And so it takes courage to take a step back and say, okay, these patterns, everything going on in my life doesn't seem to be helping in regards to whatever this longing sense of looking for something is. And it takes courage to then redirect that external focus and say, all right, I'm going to go in. And that moment it's a very beautiful moment, but it also takes tremendous courage because when we go inside, we start finding out there's some things in there, right?
Yeah. And it's so beautiful that you're bringing this forward because I pulled a card before I jumped on with you and it was external validation. It was about literally exactly what you just said, that we do. It's so easy to get distracted because we're so overstimulated and we're constantly getting pulled in so many different directions, but we don't have to listen to that call. Right. And I remember when I first started I've always been introspective. I've been a therapist for 20 years, but turning internally and being able to look at deeper levels after I entered the spiritual energetic world, we're very emotional, but it was a beautiful, relieving, cleansing emotional, like I knew it was getting me to that next level of clarity about who I am and what I'm meant for.
It's absolutely beautiful. Something that my therapist, shout out to Dr. Bear, that he says to me all the time is that grief and joy run in the same river. And what I mean by that is that if we want to feel joy, if we want to feel those deep ecstasies and feel what it's really like to be completely connected, we also have to feel the grief, right? We have to feel the sorrow and recognize the suffering that exists as well, because it does run in the same river. If we're to cut ourselves off from the grief, we also cut ourselves off from the joy as well.
So much. And it really, and I love that concept because grief is really a very flowing, dynamic energy, and it has its own field, it has its own path. And so it really allows us to surrender to the flow. And what I always say is, I believe that the process of growth really includes a grief of the previous version of ourselves, of our old stories, of those attachments that we've held on to, that we get to gain awareness of whether we want to drag those into our future or our present.
Absolutely.
So cool.
Yeah.
So I know one of the things you talk about is like emotion shame. So can you talk to us about what that is and kind of where that comes from?
Absolutely. So in my own life, even just recognizing that how big of an impact shame actually has on who I am as a human being. And the reason that, you'd ask me maybe what the title of this episode would be, and I said learning to be human. And that's actually also the name of my podcast as well, is learning to be human. And that is the emotion shame tries to keep us away from being human. What I would notice in my life is that I was constantly oscillating between having this idea that I was better than other people or that I was worse than other people. And I was constantly oscillating between being better than and being worse than, and never actually falling right in the middle of just being human and just recognizing that I'm okay as I am and not having this need to constantly look to the outside world, right? This is where validation seeking comes in. What is validation seeking? Validation seeking is premised on top of shame. And if we dive deeper into what shame is, well, shame is that emotion that sits there when we don't feel that we're good enough, when we're constantly doing a lot of things, and maybe we're earning money, or perhaps we're even finding ourselves in encounters that we're appearing sexually attracted to individuals, but there's always like this underlying feeling of something isn't right, or I'm not good enough, or there's something off here. Well, that underlying emotion is shame. And we picked up that emotion in our childhood, in probably the earliest years. John Bradshaw, in his book, Healing the Shame That Binds You, he talks about, it's really from ages 0 to 7 that we really pick up this emotion. And typically what happens is that we learn to seek love from the external world in some way. And we do this through, for instance, the conditioning of our parents or caretakers, right? If we only received their love if we were good boys or good girls, or we only received love if we did well on tests, or we learned some kind of conditioned way in order to receive love. And that's the whole trip of this, is that we already are love, right? And so we strip ourselves from that of which we are when we place a condition on becoming who we really are. And that's why the emotion shame is so slippery, because we can constantly be doing so much, but this is where self-doubt comes from. This is where not feeling good enough for the things that we truly want to let into our life comes from. And so if we can really dive into shame as an emotion and learn to feel it and to heal it in safe spaces, then we can start releasing, for instance, blocks around money, or blocks around letting our dreams in, or blocks around really stepping into the fullness of who we are.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that, because that's what's been kind of coming up in my field and with a lot of my clients and loved ones lately, is this shame around, because there's been so much expansion, especially with the Lionsgate portal and so much going on just cosmically with the eclipse season lately. There's been so much expansion, and it's beautiful, but it also opens a door and a window to more opportunity and to accessing a higher level of desire. And that as we continue to desire more and more, that shame comes up. Even if we've jumped into shame over and over and over again in so many layers, as you desire more and realize, I'm actually deserving of that. I'm deserving of everything that I desire. And it's okay that my desires are big and they get to continue to grow, and I get to continue to want more joy, more love, more connection, more intimacy, whatever. And shame can show up then, because it's like, oh, wait, you want to go even bigger? And that's just, I think, a very natural human response to our conditioning from the time that we were young.
Absolutely. And that's the whole trip of this universe. If you think about it, shame is kind of like it's like the constrictor, right? If we're just a constant current of energy that is flowing, shame is kind of like insulator. It just kind of like restricts us, and it really just closes us off to the world. And the best way that we can go about healing from shame, my dad actually taught me this, is that shame is an emotion of hiding.
Yeah.
And shame is the emotion of, trying to protect ourselves. And John Bradshaw in his book actually talks about there is healthy shame as well. Shame isn't always bad. It teaches us, it serves an emotional purpose. And when we blush, that's shame coming up. It's being revealed in some way that we weren't ready to be revealed. That's what shame ultimately is. And with shame, the process of healing it, yes, you may be able to heal it in solitude if you're able to go in and tap into those emotions by yourself. But because shame is an emotion of hiding, usually that means that we must reveal our shame in safe situations in order to heal it. So, right. So in the context of a therapist or a loved one who's able to hold space in that way, we're able to reveal ourselves in a safe context, because if it isn't a safe space, if that individual can't hold you in that space, then they might perpetuate that trauma or that shame a bit further.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's so beautiful, because I tell people that all the time. I'm like, I love meeting with my mentors. I love meeting with my coaches, because, I have all of these skills. We all do. We all have this inside of us. We can do it ourselves. But what's so beautiful is that when I feel held and tethered in my human form, I get to expand even bigger. I get to go even deeper. I get to desire even larger. And it's fun. Honestly, it's so fun. And it's so comforting. And we're meant to do that. We're meant to collaborate with one another.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me what it means to you to be human.
Yeah, it's a big one. And I think it's so important. And really, I love to even just jump into the cliche of, we are human beings, right? And
Yeah.
It's thrown around a lot, but that is what it is it's learning to just be. It's learning to not need to do something in order to be, right? And so I think that, especially in the Western culture, we sort of fall into this way of thinking of, I'm only worthy if I've done something worth doing, right? And with that comes the guilt of even like wanting to take a nap or wanting to rest. And I notice that I fall into that. If it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm getting kind of sleepy, I want a little siesta or something, there's something inside me that says like, no, you could be doing something during this time. You could be accomplishing, right? And so it's almost as if we've attached our sense of identity to our accomplishments. And because of that, we're always striving for more, because that isn't enough. And so to answer your question, what does it mean to be human? To be human is to learn to recognize who you are, to recognize what this incarnation is, and to recognize that we don't need to do anything in order to be. And I think that to loop it back even into the context of shame doesn't want us to be human. To recognize human, you know what that means? It means we make mistakes, and that's okay. And it's learning how we make mistakes, just as we were infants once, and we learned to stand on our own 2 feet. We learned to crawl, we learned to hobble, and we didn't get it our first time. And we felt that we didn't have the context of what we were supposed to be doing or what shame was at that time. And so we just kept going and we kept learning, right? So it's seeing yourself as a human being, it's seeing yourself as you fall, and then learning how to stand back up again. And so within this, it's a deepening in the quest to reveal the true self as an expression of a human being. To be human means to own who you are in any given moment. And I think one of the most profound and one of the most beautiful ways of being is to have the humility to sit in the I don't know. And what I mean by that is to have the humility to not always have the answers, and to be able to lay down our sword. And I do this all the time, where I have to catch myself and say, I don't know, and have the shame to say that you don't know. And you can even have a moment like being able to give yourself the permission to ask stupid questions, because I guarantee that 80% of the other people in the room have that same question and they're just too afraid to ask. And you asking that stupid question, you only have to ask it once, and then you learn. right? So it's laying down the righteousness of knowing and having humility to continue to learn.
That's so beautiful. That was something that I struggled with for years. And it's so liberating to be free of that, because it's really just so much ego resistance, and the ego just like fighting to stay ahead and to stay on top and to prove itself. And honestly, it's freaking exhausting. It wears you down. I mean, it depletes you. It can lead to burnout.
Absolutely. And even just to speak on that, I am recovering from this summer. I went through a huge period of burnout. I got to the point where I had, just to give some context, there was this validation seeking urge inside of me that I had uncovered that was, was laying in my shadow, was dormant to my conscious mind. And I uncovered it. And I just saw how this validation seeking was exactly like you were saying, was trying to prove itself in some way. And I saw how it was enacting itself in social media and relationships and in social contexts. And I had to just take a complete step back and just take a couple of weeks to just lay off of everything, and kind of just went into a own mini meditation retreat of my own to take care of this. But there's a point where, that burnout, like, it's so difficult to recognize that burnout comes when we're just not taking care of ourselves as a human being. And it really is as simple as, I know that when I'm burnt out, one of the best things I can do is just go and take a nap and just like stop whatever I'm doing. It just goes and sleep. And it's like, when I do go through burnout, my partner and I, we run comfort zone retreats together, and we created this thing called the Simplicity Star, which is kind of just looking at the different areas of your life to see if you're actually taking care of yourself. So it's like, am I drinking water? Am I going out in nature? Am I putting sunlight on my face? Am I working out? Am I eating the right food? And am I sleeping? Right. And it's like, if you kind of just do those 5 things and you're just taking care of yourself, that's really all it takes. But it's so easy for us to just slip up on, you might have a headache, you may be feeling off one day, and it's like, have I even drank a glass of water yet today? Right. So it's like, it's just the simple things that really help keep us going. But acknowledging that it's real.
Yeah. And that's what I find more and more over time, is just this retreat to simplicity, like continuing to come back to simplicity, because again, we have this overstimulating world that we're constantly, that we're part of every single day. And so it's being able to be really intentional about simplicity, not, and allowing that to be enough, and allowing that to be blissful, to find bliss within simplicity is something that takes practice, especially if you're an adult who's been running through this world for decades, and has picked up a lot of conditioning. And so I think it's really beautiful to introduce that to the younger generation as well, so that they can be preventive about getting into a go, go, go mentality, and a hiding mentality, and a shame mentality.
Something that you mentioned is finding bliss in the simplicity. And I think that's so beautiful. And Joseph Campbell, in his work, he has a quote that bliss is any emotion fully felt. And that is what bliss is. And if you think about what you just said, it's the returning to the simplicity. When we are constantly stimulated, we're constantly in the head, we're constantly getting these dopamine hits, and it's difficult to drop back in the body. I notice that when I'm on my computer for 4, 5, 6 hours in a day in a row, it does take a little bit of time before I can like take a step back, and like my brain's just kind of like foggy, and almost it feels like a staticky electric sort of sensation, and to just come back into the body. But even just to acknowledge what you said of this future generation coming up, it is going to be a huge struggle of short-term gratification. It's going to be a huge struggle of validation seeking through the use of social media. It's already being developed right now. And I know one of my close friends, she's a high school teacher, and they can't go longer than 20-30 minutes without having a phone break for these children. And I'm very fortunate that I just passed that age of phones weren't allowed in high school at that point. But to just like see that that's not just a part of daily life, that's a part of the circadian rhythm, it's interesting, and we'll see how that plays out.
I know, it's funny because that's, as a parent of 3 kids, I'm very conscious of space, of intentionally creating space for every single one of us, because I refuse to have that go from here to here to here to here, achieve, 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 you know? And if they're drawn to that naturally, you know, I'm going to support their flow, but at the same time, I'm also going to always, every single day, open up space, because that's what I say for your highest level of vitality. I don't necessarily care what you do within that space, but open up space for yourself. That's the number one thing you can do, because I think some people feel pressure from, okay, I'm going to open up that space. Now, what do I do? Right? What do I do with this? I need to make this productive space. You know, that mentality shifts into that space. And it's just do whatever you want to do. Sometimes I'll spend that space jumping around to 16 things, but I'll always settle into something. Right. And so it's trusting yourself and trusting the flow that you will be guided to exactly what's meant for you when you open up the space to do it.
I'm curious, how do you open up space with your children? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So with my kids, I'm very conscious of their schedule. And so when we're like, for instance, we just recently planned out the fall because that's coming up with school starting soon. And we kind of put everything down and map out and say, okay, what does this look like? And it's like, all right, now let's consider who you are, how your energy operates, how much sleep you need, how you thrive the best, and when you start to shut down, right? And let's identify, okay, like where are we in terms of you allowing your energy to be what it is, right? And then we kind of tweak things. We take things away, we add things so that they have breathing room, because thinking about putting something on the calendar where they look at it and it's like, oh my gosh, now I know that Friday nights I want to relax, or I know that this or that, right? And so it's being able to say, we need to cultivate space every single day for you. And I don't do this like in a you have to do this way, but in a, you know, I desire to open that up for you if it's something that makes you feel more spacious and more free and more liberated, especially for kids, because kids feel like they're told what to do all the time, right? They feel trapped a lot of the time. They feel like they're dictated to. And so to be able to really bring their voice into it and say, what I always ask is, how does this feel in your body? Like, how does this feel in your body and in your field when you look at this calendar? What does it feel like? And then we go from there and we tweak it until it feels really free and comfortable.
That's beautiful that you're teaching your children to tap into the body already, you know?
Oh yeah, big time. And I love it so much because like my kids will say to me, like, I don't know what it is, but it just doesn't feel right. You know, and then my husband will be like, yeah, but what's the reason? Like, what are you thinking? And I said, he doesn't need a reason. It's just a vibe. He just feels it. And that's enough.
And to just trust the intuition.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And teaching them it's brave, but it's also so natural. It's funny because like I look at it with adults and I feel like that's such a big act of bravery, you know, but then I look at kids and I'm like, it's just natural, you know?
Absolutely. There's a quote that I love quoting, and essentially the last part of it goes like, do not teach me the wisdom that does not bow before children. Right. So it's like they're what we as adults are like striving to be in our day to day, which is just in that alpha state, just to be completely connected. And you know, it's so beautiful. So it's like recognizing that how amazing it is that we have children to just teach us in that context. And I'm coaching soccer right now, ages 7 to 10. So it's just really, you know, it's so amazing to be in that space with these children and really just get to watch them. And they're like little Zen masters, you know, they're so connected, and they're just, yeah. So they're catching me slip into unconsciousness all the time. So they're able to like bring me back. And it's so beautiful that they're just like these little yogis running around. So
they are. And I just love that you're receiving that. I think that's so beautiful. So I know that one of the things you wanted to offer today was a meditation, a little meditation. Do you still have that available for us?
Absolutely. So I have the link ready to go, and I
Perfect.
could also even just do, we could, I could send that over to you. So I do have a guided meditation. And then also, if you're looking for more information on even just shame and trauma, that's really what my podcast is about, is kind of just diving into the healing of how we even go into that and understanding that even deeper. So
absolutely. So we're going to drop those links here too, as well as how to connect with you. Would you say Instagram's the best way to connect?
Yeah, absolutely. And feel free to reach out to me. You can DM me and then give me a follow, and I'd love to have a conversation with you. So feel free to reach out.
Awesome. We're going to get all those links dropped right now, and you guys can just click away. And what I always say towards the end of this show is, if you felt connected to Christopher, if you like his energy, if you feel safe and comfortable, if you like the way he thinks, the way he makes sense of the world, just message him, just say hello. It's just another conversation with a human. And these are the kinds of connections that help us expand. And I just encourage you to take that brave step for yourself, to just say hi. And the foundation of what we grow into is very often set by our human connections. So take advantage of that, because finding that safe space, like we were talking about earlier, is what's going to help you feel tethered to grow even more exponentially. So is there anything else you'd like to share, Christopher, before we sign off today?
Absolutely, yeah. So we at Comfort Zone Retreats, that's the company that my partner and I run together. We have an upcoming Comfort Zone retreat, August 24th to 28th in Colorado. So that feels like it's calling out to you. You can go to comfortzoneretreats.com. And we're also going to Big Bend in October. And like I mentioned before, this is what we're diving into. We're diving into emotions, we're diving into healing, but we're also playing, we're connecting the inner child, we're having fun, and we're building community. So if that feels like it's something that calls out to you, you can either DM me or go to comfortzoneretreats.com.
Perfect. I love that so much. Thank you so much for being here. This was so beautiful. And I'm so grateful that everybody had a chance to get to know you, and that they will get to continue to dive in with your meditation. So thanks for offering that.
Absolutely, Laura. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And everyone, I will see you again. Actually, I don't know that I'm live next week because I think I'm going to be away, but I will be here the following for another episode of Heal Profoundly and Enduringly. And have a beautiful week. I'll see you all very soon.
Take care.
Bye for now.